really links security both in digital and physical world. So it's quite interesting for this conference here. So QCIT means quantified cities. So our vision is that many efforts have been made for the last decade to understand behavior of people online, like understanding where you will click, what you will buy, like on shopping, e-commerce sites, and any kind of site on Facebook, understanding why you like these things, how you relate to other people. If some people like this, you will buy this kind of stuff. So a lot of efforts have been made for understanding this kind of behavior online. And the consequences you have now, for example, personalized advertisement and stuff like this. So our ambition at QCIT is kind of understand the behavior of people, but inside the city, in the physical world. So it's very complex stuff, because in the physical world everything is messy. And our aim is, and mission is to, once we have understood the behavior of people, we want to improve their everyday life. So we have several, we call them verticals. It's kind of fields we work for. The main one is about mobility. We try to understand why people will use a vehicle, a car, a bike, depending on the context, the weather, the day of the week, the hour, and many contextual features, variables. And so, for example, we work for shared vehicles, like, for example, in Bordeaux, if you know the VCube company, they have the bicycles you can rent at some stations. So for them, we predict the demand of bikes at stations to optimize the distribution of the stations and the bikes in the city. We also work on parking, so I will talk about this later. We also work about road safety, so we predict incidents on the highways. For example, we work on the highway from Bordeaux to Bayonne, and we help the operator to patrol the highway in order to prevent the incidents. And in case there's an accident or something bad happening, we help him put the resources at the right place, so it can be on the site of the incident in a very short time to intervene. We also work with urban planners and cities to improve urban design, also street cleaning and sweeping, and things like this. So basically, how we can do this? We have one main core technology to address all of these issues. It's based on 3 main steps. The first step is collecting and processing a lot of data about the city. So, for example, we collect a lot of data about the urban infrastructure. We know where are the roads, streets, where are the shops, hostels, restaurants, parks, trees, whatever. We have like hundreds of features to describe and digitalize the city. We also have some events of interest. It can be a football game, it can be concerts. We also have data about the traffic, many kinds of data that describe the city. We also have like weather information. We know if it's raining, sunny, the pressure, the wind speed and direction, and many very specific features about weather conditions. Also, we use a lot of calendar information, because people will have different behaviors on Sunday than on Wednesday, in the morning, in the evening, if it's summer or winter, if it's school holiday, or if it's just a business week, classical business week. So we have all of this data that digitalize the city, and the computer is able to have, like, if you are playing the SimCity, or I don't know what kind of game, but the computer has a model of the environment. And on top of this data, we also grab and collect the customer data depending on his problems. For example, if you want to predict how many people will take a bike at this station and how many people will need to put a bike back in another station, we take bike data from the bike operator. So for example, in Bordeaux, every minute in all of the 170 stations, every minute we have a snapshot of how many bikes are there, how many dogs are free to leave a bike, and we collect all of this data. So this is the example for the bike, but for example for the road incidents, we also collect all geolocations and timestamps of the incidents happening on the highway, and so on for the other kind of problems we tackle. And so this is the first part. Once we have collected and processed all of this data, we can apply artificial intelligence algorithms. So what does it mean? We have some algorithms and models that learn the behavior of people based on all the data we have processed. So for example, the algorithm will learn that on Friday at 6 p.m. a lot of people will take some bikes near the working areas and go to the city center, maybe to have a drink or go to restaurants and so on. So based on the historical data and all the context of the city, the algorithm infer why people take more bikes at this particular location and time. And once the model is sufficiently trained, we can go to the last step, optimize services. Once the algorithms are trained on the past data, they are able to predict accurately what will happen in 2 hours, in 3 days, or in 1 week. And we provide these predictions to our customers on top of other services and applications to optimize the services. So I will show you one example of applications to parking enforcement. Here are our customers. So we are a startup from Bordeaux, but we work in many cities in France. We're starting to work in Europe, like in Amsterdam, in Belgium, in the Amsterdam and Belgium in Europe for now. And we have also offices in New York, since we won an acceleration program last year called UrbanX. So we have offices in Brooklyn as well, and we are now starting some pilots in the US as well. This is our team. We are mainly tech people with many engineers. We are a lot of data scientists and backend engineers. There are a couple of people also doing the business stuff, but we are now hiring because we are growing. We just won also, we just finished our seeding funding round, and we are hiring people. So either in business development, if you are interested, and also many people for the infrastructure tech part. So if you are interested in data engineering, data science, DevOps, we hire positions for this kind of work. So that's the global picture about QSIT. Now I will just talk about one product very related to security and enforcing security compliance with the law and regulations. It's about parking enforcement. Who here had like a parking fine, I mean this year, for example? You? Where was it?
Well, in the States.
In the States?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. What about you?
Hyundai.
In Hyundai, okay, nice. So why I'm asking this? Because this year in France, there was a new reform that's about depenalization or decriminalization of parking, paid parking. Previously, paid parking was a national matter. There was like a uniform fine all over France, and the police was regulating all of this. But starting from the 1st of January this year, it has been depenalized, and now every city can choose how she will regulate parking enforcement. So the city can choose the amount of the fines. She can choose who will control. Now, private companies can control, not only the police. And So there have been many changes in behaviors of people and behaviors also of cities regarding parking enforcement. For example, before the reform in France, there was an average of 30% payment rate. It means more than half people were not paying parking in France. In Paris, it was like 10% people paying parking. In Bordeaux, it was half of them. Okay. So now, a couple of months after the reform, it has changed the behaviors of people. For example, in Paris, it has tripled the number of payers. In Béziers and Bordeaux, it's quite reasonable, now 70%, 80%. If we go in other countries in Europe, several years ago they had already chosen to depenalize paid parking. For example, in the United Kingdom and Spain, where the respect rate went from about 30% to 90% after a couple of years. So this, for us, the fact that enforcement was depenalized in France was a great signal for us to work on this kind of problem and optimize how can we predict behavior of people and make them change their behaviors to comply with the law regarding parking. If we go worldwide, still in Europe. So for example, in France, one specificity is that only paid parking has been depenalized. But if you go to other countries, other kind of parking have been depenalized as well. For example, reserve parking has been depenalized in Belgium, Netherlands, Norway. The most visionary country maybe is the UK, which has depenalized all kinds of parking. So for example, even now private companies can enforce people that badly park on spots for what we call reduced mobility people. Do you say that? People with reduced mobility. Disabled people, yeah, for example. Yeah. So in France, it's just for paid parking now, but it might change in next years. In the world, there are many. I will not talk about all the cities, but many cities that have made lots of efforts towards better enforcement and parking management. And the only things to remember to know here is the choice of the technology has revealed to be the main lever of efficiency. For example, having parking meters that are connected to control teams, so the team know the plate of the car, the team knows how much is paid and how long it can stay for. It has been a major lever of efficiency. So in this context, at QSIT, we will use all of this data to predict to the control team where and when to go enforce parking to improve the system. So the expected consequences are, first, people will comply with the rules. Okay, well, that's great. But what is more interesting in the long term is a reduction of the traffic in the city centers, road congestion, and it will promote access to the city centers, for example, for people that have shops. And they often complain that city centers cannot be accessed by vehicles and they lose money. So this is one of the effects. Another effect is the financial gains of people paying now the parking can be reinvested in better and more durable infrastructures. For example, in public transportation, tram, bus, metro, also what we call in France parking relais. It's big parking, off-street parking, when you can just leave your car in the city suburbs and then take the public transportation to go to the center. And the last effect in the long term is reduction in the pollution and better improved quality of air. So this is the consequence, the effects we expect to have with such improvements. To achieve this, we have like different steps of data science. Basically, it's often described in 4 steps: descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. So descriptive would be, for example, I collect the data from my customer and I say, okay, this is how evolves the rate of payment day by day. You see some peaks, but it's not really helpful to help him to tell him go and control at this place at this particular time. It's really factual observation here. It's not actionable by the enforcement team on the field. You can, here is a map where the green points are people who have paid and red points that they haven't paid. It really depends on the hour of the day. You don't really know where you should go when. It's only descriptive information here. If you go a step further and do some diagnostic, you can compute like statistical averages and say, okay, it seems like by the end of the week, less people are paying maybe. But as you can see, here is the average in blue, but the red is the maximum and the yellow is the minimum. Actually, on a Friday, there can be a lot of differences from one Friday to the Friday, so it's not sufficient to know to yesterday, last Friday, was there many people frauding or not? Next Friday, where should I go? It's not enough. So what we do is, I'll skip this one because we are running out of time. What we do is apply the very same pipeline as I showed you previously. We collect a lot of data about the control and enforcement. So the calendar, weather information, point of interest like restaurants, hostels. We have all control data from our customer. He gives us all the control he did, like with the date, the geolocation, the car he controlled, and was it a fraudster or not. We know the parking infrastructure of the city, the geolocations of all parking spots, the number of them, the type of spot, if it's reserved for disabled people, is it a regular spot, and we have all the street geometry of the city. And once we have collected all of this data, we train the machine learning algorithms. So there's the first part where the algorithm calibrates on the history, and when he has sufficiently trained, we are able to predict the number of violations in a specific location and time. And once we collect some new data from day to day, we can recalibrate periodically the algorithm so that he adapts to the structural changes in the cities and changes in behaviors. And finally, how is it provided to the customer? We provide a dashboard for the managers where there are recommendations on the locations to visit and the periods of main interest. You can also compute some operational priorities. For example, if the agents need to walk a long street, it takes more time than it's the same number of infractions in a short street. We also address different types of violations, like for example paid parking, but also reserved parking for disabled people and so on. We provide other kind of analytics for the manager to better monitor his team and planning. And all of these predictions and recommendations can also be forwarded to agents on the field in the streets through via mobile application, for example, or something like this. So just to show you in 1 minute how it looks like, for example, for the manager, he has a map of the city. Here it's Amsterdam, with every street colored from yellow to red, depending on the number of infractions. The more red, the more violations here. He can also predict for tomorrow, like 1 week in advance. He can also work with like sectors for his team patrolling, for example, because the street level is very precise. It's hard so he works with like sectors, like a couple of hundred of sectors, to send cars and agents on foot. And for example, in a particular sector, you can see how infraction will evolve. So, for example, it's more interesting in this sector to go by the end of the day, where people would stop paying because they think no people will control. So this is how it looks like, basically. So I am done with the presentation, and feel free if you have any question to ask. or to chat afterwards. Thank you.
Before we get to questions, I just want to say again, it's great to see technology companies like